In 2016, the Golden State Killer case was a ghost story, a sprawling scar across the map of California. For 40 years, a phantom haunted the state's collective memory, responsible for at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and over 120 burglaries. He was a shadow with 1,000 faces but no name. A ghost with a perfect genetic fingerprint, a full DNA profile, but no one to match it to. The files were ice cold. The trail, for all intents and purposes, had ended. The ghost had left one thing behind. From a crime scene in Ventura County in 1980, detectives had a pristine sample of his DNA. For decades, it was the ultimate frustration in forensic science. It was like having a suspect's social security number, but no database to run it against. In the early 2000s, this sample was run through CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database. The investigators held their breath. This was their best shot.
No match found.
The result came back, no match. The conclusion was chilling. Before he was the Golden State Killer, he had other names, fractured identities across the state. In Sacramento, he was the East Area Rapist. Further south, police hunted the cunning Visalia ransacker. No one knew they were all the same man. He was more than a burglar or rapist, he was a psychological terrorist. He would spend hours in a victim's home, learning its layout, eating their food. He would call them for months, even years, after the attack, whispering threats down the phone line. He bound his victims, placing a teacup on the man's back, promising to kill them both if he heard it fall. This was about power and a meticulous, sadistic control. The perfect clue remained a dead end. But the keepers of the case refused to let it die. One of those keepers was Contra Costa County investigator Paul Holes. The case wasn't just a file to him, it became what he called his submerged dark passenger, a constant, physical reminder of the ghost he was hunting. At the same time, a new kind of investigator joined the hunt. Writer Michelle McNamara was not a detective, she was a true crime writer who ran a popular blog from her living room. But her obsession was relentless. She built a community of online sleuths, digitizing thousands of pages of police files, connecting clues that had been gathering dust for decades. She gave the killer his final, definitive name, the Golden State Killer. Tragically, the case consumed her. She died in her sleep in 2016, never knowing how close she was. Her posthumous book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, would become a phenomenon, breathing new life into the hunt. Together, this fusion of old-school detective work and obsessive citizen journalism kept the case alive. They knew the answer wasn't in the past. It had to be in the future. They just had to wait for technology to catch up to the ghost. That future arrived in the mid-2010s. The rise of direct-to-consumer DNA testing created a new phenomenon, genetic genealogy. The key was a public website called GEDmatch. It was created for amateur genealogists, a place where people could upload their DNA data from sites like Ancestry or 23andMe to find distant relatives. It was an open-source library of genetic information. The investigators uploaded the killer's DNA not as a criminal, but as another user looking for family. That's when they got the hit. Not a close match, but a third cousin. It wasn't a suspect, but it was a thread. The lead fell to a retired patent attorney turned genealogist, Barbara Raventer. What she did next was a monumental feat of digital detective work. Starting with those 19th century great-great-grandparents, she painstakingly built a family tree forward through time, using census records, obituaries, and social media. She built a web of over 1,000 people, eliminating branches of the family until only one remained that contained a man of the right age, living in the right location. That man was Joseph James D'Angelo. And he was a former police officer. The puzzle pieces snapped into place with horrifying clarity. The man in the uniform had been the monster all along. He was a cop in Auburn when the attacks started nearby, turning the suburbs of Sacramento into a landscape of fear. But he didn't stay there. His hunting grounds expanded. He moved south, into the sprawling suburbs of the San Francisco Bay Area, bringing his unique brand of terror to communities like Fremont and San Jose. In every new territory, D'Angelo didn't just leave behind DNA, he left behind echoes of his own meticulous, obsessive pathology. He kept hand-drawn maps of neighborhoods he terrorized, planning his routes of attack and escape with chilling precision. But investigators also found clues to the rage that fueled him, hidden in his own handwriting. In essays discovered from his youth, he revealed a deep-seated anger. It was an obsession with a single, driving idea: punishment. But a profile, no matter how perfect, wasn't enough. They needed his DNA. In April of 2018, investigators began a final, delicate dance of covert surveillance. After watching him shop at a Hobby Lobby, they retrieved a tissue he had discarded. The samples were rushed to the lab. The results came back, a perfect, one-to-one match.
James D'Angelo in the Sacramento County area overnight. McNamara today was credited by many on social media for helping re-energize interest in this decades-old case. Now, we have a lot more on the arrest on KTVU.com, including an interactive map of the crimes across the state, video and stories from the 1970s when the crimes were covered, and tons of social media reaction about the arrest.
The ghost had a name. The needle had been hiding in plain sight. For decades, Joseph D'Angelo lived a quiet life. He was a father, a grandfather, a neighbor. For 40 years, the monster was a phantom. A faceless ghost. Now, the mask was off.
Tonight, hiding in plain sight. Police say one of the most elusive serial killers in American history has been captured outside his suburban home.
We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento.
Law enforcement now identifying 72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo as the Golden State Killer. The once married former police officer now under arrest for a violent crime spree that terrorized California for more than 40 years.
Possibly he was committing the crimes during the time he was employed as a peace officer, and obviously we'll be looking into whether it was actually on the job.
Detectives working the case for decades, but D'Angelo not a suspect until days ago when they got a break. They say cutting-edge DNA testing allowed them to make a match.
We were able to get some discarded DNA, and we were able to confirm what we thought we already knew, that we had our man.
With the ghost now a man in a cage, the survivors finally had a chance to confront him. At his sentencing hearing, dozens of victims and their families faced him in court, one by one, to describe the decades of pain he had caused. He sat silently in a wheelchair, a frail old man who refused to meet their gaze. In the end, he pled guilty to 13 murders and dozens of other crimes to avoid the death penalty. The 40-year hunt was over. The case that had stumped generations of investigators was ultimately solved not with a dusty fingerprint, but with a distant cousin's saliva, a public database, and the relentless work of keepers who refused to let the ghost win.
After days of hearing from survivors of its 13 murders, kidnappings, and scores of rapes, he stood up and took off his mask.
I've listened to all your statements, each one of them. And I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt.